Now I'll be up here for a little bit. Turn that down just a little bit. I have my new apprentice back there running my spot, so we'll see how that goes. Okay, so in my life recently, I've kind of been noticing for a while now, specifically for myself, a desire for quiet. Just quiet. And not just because I have, a wife and 2 children running around the house, or because I deal with loud stuff at work or driving all the time, but there are times when it feels like I literally hear nothing because of all the noise. There's so much going on and I hear none of it. It's just too much sometimes. And it reminds me of a story when I was thinking about this. It reminds me of a story. Some of you may have been here for it. Long time ago, Raymond, we were all downstairs and it was just loud. And when you're downstairs, everybody's got their own conversation going and it was just loud. We're sitting right across the table from each other and we could not hear each other talk. And he was in mid-thought, and he just stopped, stood up, and looked around the room, and then just went, "Hey!" And everybody went silent. And he said, "That's better," and he sat down. And we went back to our conversation. Rose has done that once, too. But it's, you just get everybody's attention, something shocking. All of a sudden, it's like, everybody takes a breath, comes down a little bit, and it's just silent, and then we started over. It just kind of made me think of that. Anyways, and it seems like there are no end to the items all around us at any given moment that'll rush forward to fill that void of silence. There's so much stuff that if there's a moment of silence, something wants to jump in that silence. I've known people who just are uncomfortable with silence. If it starts to get silent, they feel like they have to say something. Something's got to be said, or turn on the radio, or got to have some noise in there somewhere. So we often invite this to happen to ourselves. Other times it just happens despite our best efforts to avoid it. Many people invite that noise into their existence to avoid the silence altogether. Why? Why would we do that? As I was putting this together and typing up my notes last night, I just kind of sat there for a second, and just the normal everyday noises of life. Camellia was downstairs cooking. The girls are running around doing stuff in the living room. I'm upstairs. Just the regular everyday noises of life constantly around us all the time. Take those away. If I can remove those noises and then have it totally silent, but even then it's not silent. I've got my computer fan humming at me the whole time. The air conditioner's kicking on downstairs and I can hear it through the house. There's always a noise, and if the closer you listen, the more you'll hear, even though it's quiet. Everybody uses an onion as all kinds of analogies. Well, here's another one. You got that onion, you take off that outer layer of all that noise, all the world pushing on you. You take off that outer layer of onion, what do you have? You've got another layer of onion. There's still noise, it's just a little smaller. You get to the next one, it's a little smaller, but there's still noise there. Yeah, even you, Sonny, you can pull them things out. I'll get to you in a minute. So think about this. When was the last time you were quiet for 15 minutes? And no, sleeping does not count for many of us as quiet time. I can vouch for myself. I snore, so. But 15 minutes, think about that. Total, complete silence for 15 minutes. I mean, even right now, just that couple of seconds, there was a little bit of noise. There was a little something. I can hear things buzzing and humming, and there's just noise all the time. So who has ever been in a place that's been so quiet that you could actually hear a pin drop? But not only does it have to be that quiet, I'll get to that in a second. During those moments of that close to almost perfect silence, how are your emotions? What are you feeling during that? Are they ordered? Are they orderly? Or are they kind of not comfortable with it, a little disorderly, maybe a little chaotic, not sure what to do with yourself? Because those moments of silence can be very uncomfortable for many people. So here's a personal question for you all to consider. Does silence bother you? As you consider that question, I want to extend that concept of silence a little bit. I've recently come to a place where I just sort of clicked. It's not just looking for a noise-free sort of environment, the physical noise for my ears, but also a quiet, restful place for my mind as well. So just because you can pull those things out of your ears, Sonny, and not hear the actual noise, how noisy is it inside your own head? That's what I was getting at with that pin drop. It could be totally silent in here, and we could have that nice hard floor, and you could drop that pin. But if your mind is so cluttered and noisy in itself, you're still not going to hear that noise. You can clutter your mind up with thoughts so much that you won't hear the physical noise. And there's all kinds of things that get in there, the constant distractions, so many things to do and so little time to get them done, so your mind is constantly trying to juggle all that. Are the bills paid? Is tomorrow trash day? Do I have any emails waiting for me? Is there an update from someone I know on Facebook about a funny animal video I didn't see? I don't know. There's all kinds of crazy things that people get in their way in their lives and think about. But even when all actual sounds are removed, our minds are a very noisy place. This is a problem for so many today, and they may not even know it. We all need those quiet, peaceful, restful moments, not just physically, but also emotionally and as Christians, spiritually. We need those quiet times. I got a couple verses here that are going to point that out. The first one I want to look at is in 1 Kings 19. Elijah had traveled to Mount Horeb. He was told by the angel of the Lord to get up and eat, and then get up and eat again because you're going to need more energy for this trip. And so he went. And so in 1 Kings chapter 19, verse 11, it starts with, "And he said, 'Go forth and stand upon the mount before the Lord. And behold, the Lord passed by, and a great and strong wind rent the mountains, and brake in pieces the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, an earthquake. But the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, a fire. But the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, a still small voice.' And it was so, when Elijah heard it, that he wrapped his face in his mantle and went out and stood in the entering of the cave. And behold, there came a voice unto him and said, 'What doest thou here, Elijah?'" The Lord's power and majesty is passing before Elijah at this point. He's in this cave, and all this awesome and terrible events, earthquakes, fires, wind, there's all this stuff just shaking the very existence around him. But it had to get to that quiet, that still, soft point so that he could hear the voice. And as soon as he heard that, he knew the Lord was then present. And he moved to the front of the cave to be there in his presence. Another analogy that hits home is a storm. People talk about, the storms of life, and the winds are always blowing, and it could be raining on you, and the eye of the storm, and all this stuff. There's a calm part there. But let's not pretend that our lives are this storm, and we're being battered by the winds, rains, drought, natural disasters of various kinds, some disasters of our own making, just a constant barrage of stuff in our lives. What is the opposite of that mess? Quietness, peace. In Mark, we have a stormy event. People are scared. Too much is going on all around them, and they could only see the troubles in front of them. And this is in a couple of different the Gospels, but this one in Mark, I like the way it was done, portrayed. Mark 4:36 through 39. "And when they had sent away the multitude, they took him, even as he was in the ship, and there were also with them other little ships. And there arose a great storm of wind, and the waves beat into the ship so that it was now full. And he was in the hinder part of the ship, asleep on a pillow. And they awake him, and say unto him, 'Master, carest thou not that we perish?' And he arose and rebuked the wind, and said unto the sea, 'Peace, be still.' And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm." Here is a simple and profound word for our lives at the end of that: calm. That's not just about the noise, it's about in our heads and in our hearts. And then there's another mental image of that storm in Psalms. Psalms 107. "These are the works of the Lord, and his wonders in the deep. For he commandeth and raiseth the stormy wind, which lifteth up the waves thereof. They mount up to the heaven, they go down again to the depths. Their soul is melted because of trouble. They reel to and fro and stagger like a drunken man, and are at their wits' end. Then they cry unto the Lord in their trouble, and he bringeth them out of their distresses. He maketh the storm a calm, so that the waves thereof are still. Then are they glad because they be quiet. So he bringeth them into their desired haven. Sailors see the storm. They're dealing with this. They try their best to deal with it. They're messing with the rigging and the rudder, and they're steering the ship, and they have to steer into the waves and not get sideways. But to their best efforts, they have to rely on the Lord. And it's when they call out to him that he then steps in and says, okay, you're trusting in me now. Here's what I'm going to give you. I'm going to give you that calm, that peace. We need to be able to realize that when we are in our storms of life, that we need to cry out to him in our trouble, in our distresses. He will bring us out and give us a great calm and peace for our spirit. Why does God want to do this for us? What's so special about quietness? 1 Peter 3:4, but let it be the hidden man of the heart, in that which is not corruptible, even the ornament of a meek and quiet spirit, which is in the sight of God of great price. We should be seeking out the silent and quiet times in our lives, not trying to cover them up with extra noise, not inviting the noise to come into our lives. Our spirit, which the Lord gave us when he breathed life into our nostrils, craves that quietness, that time of communion with the Lord. But we got to look for it in those quiet times, for his still small voice. When he came to the boy and he called his name, and he got up, heard it, and he ran in, thought it was, no, go back. That's the Lord talking to you. It had to be in that quiet place so he could hear it. Just like Elijah, we need to listen for God in the quiet times. Proverbs 1:27-33. When your fear cometh as desolation, and your destruction cometh as a whirlwind, when distress and anguish come upon you. So here we've got desolation, destruction, whirlwinds, another storm. Then they shall call upon me, but I will not answer. They will seek me early, but they shall not find me. For they had hated knowledge and did not choose the fear of the Lord. They would none of my counsel. They despised all my reproof. Therefore they shall eat of the fruit of their own way and be filled with their own devices. For the turning away of the simple shall slay them, and the prosperity of fools shall destroy them. But whoso hearkeneth unto me shall dwell safely, and shall be quiet from fear of evil. So we know that God places a high value on a quiet spirit. We know he wants us to experience this peace in our lives. But where does that peace, that quiet, come from for our spirits? In Isaiah 32, it says, then judgment shall dwell in the wilderness, and righteousness remain in the fruitful field. And the work of righteousness shall be peace, and the effect of righteousness, quietness and assurance forever. And my people shall dwell in a peaceable habitation, and in sure dwellings, and in quiet resting places. If we don't have those quiet times in our lives, then we're never going to hear the voice of the Lord unless he's yelling at you. In which case, you probably don't want to be hearing that anyways, because you've invited that on yourself. I had an event this last week, this last Wednesday during the windstorms. And I recall this vividly because this is a similar thing, a recurring thing that happens to me, and it probably only happens once every 5-10 years. But I can remember when I was sitting there this Wednesday in my chair in front of the garage. I had just pulled all the pepper plants, and I'm picking all the vegetables off those plants, just sitting out in front of the garage. Wind's blowing through, but even in the wind, it just, all of a sudden, I just kind of sat there, and it was silent. I could see stuff moving. I could see the leaves falling, but I wasn't hearing anything else anymore. I was just sitting there, and it was silent. And I remember a feeling of just peace, just calm, restfulness. I was sitting there, and it felt like the weight of everything had just been lifted off of me for a few moments. And as I was experiencing that, I remember that I have experienced that feeling in similar situations in the past, and I can go back 4 times. And sitting there, I remember all 4 of those times vividly. The very first one was when I was 8. I remember that because it was such a strange feeling for me, and I was sitting there on a sidewalk in front of a building that I lived in Chicago. I had my bike laying here, I had stuff here, and it was cool, and the leaves were falling around me. And I remember seeing all this stuff going on, but I remember hearing nothing and thought, this is weird. And then a few more times it happened. This last time was the 4th time. And it happened at different times in my life. But it was just it sparked that memory. And I remember thinking, now that I understand a little more, I remember on Wednesday I thought, I like this. I need to look for this more often. Silence is a good thing. It may take some longer to be comfortable in the silence, but we all need to get to a point where we can be in that moment, enjoying the silence, basking in its comfort and its meaning. God wants us to have these moments with Him. Remember that even the silence can be deafening if you're listening for it. My prayer for everyone today is simple, just a little peace and quiet. God bless you.